What up? What up? It's Brian back with the Blerding While Dad podcast. This week, um, I guess here's the thing. Um, I've been back and forth on it. I did a video about it or a live stream about it last week when it happened, and the inevitable topic of the day is Chud the Builder. Now, I don't want to spend a heck of a whole lot of time um parsing this and talking about offensive words and act like my feelings were hurt because he found untalented dude found that if saying the n-word people didn't like it, and that's kind of that's what he rolled with. But I do want to spend some time um more or less talking about really a lot of the stuff regarding surrounding Chud and why I knew this was coming. All right, so yeah, I know. Um, day late, dollar short, but I had some different thoughts about this entire Chud the Builder thing. So if you guys will humor me for a little bit of time, I will sit down and I will sit here and talk about this dickhead. um, but but that's just the top of the show. That's in the How Fucked Are We segment, and I got a couple of other things that I want to discuss that aren't um current event related as much, and um really dive into a little bit more of the life with ADHD. But I want to talk a little bit about grief and how grief with ADHD is kind of a different beast. Uh, it can be, it can feel different. And so I wanted to spend some time talking about that. And then, whatever else we get into, current events, topics of the day. Here's the thing: when you live under, and I've already experienced this once, when you live under like this fascist, this weird place that we exist in right now, there's always political stuff that you can talk about, right? Hey, how's it going? Um, when you live in this world, there's always political stuff that you can talk about. I think the challenge is um, not beating everybody over the head with the political club, because at the end of the day, we're stuck with this for another, what is it, 2026? We're stuck with this for another 2.5 years or whatever. Um, and so there's going to be plenty of other offenses that the tangerine in chief is going to create, and we're going to have lots of other things to talk about. And so if it comes up during the stream, we'll talk politics, but let's get into this entire thing. Let's talk about Chud the Builder, and this kind of falls under How Fucked Are We. How Fucked Are We is really the segment I dedicate to current events. Okay. With Chud the Builder illustrates something very interesting in American media. And it's not new. None of this is new. There's nothing new about how American media frames black people in distress or suffering or being bothered, or dying, for that matter. It's framed as entertainment. Like, it's always been with that if it bleeds, it leads kind of thing. And Chud the Builder is just kind of the he's the he's the mid boss of this, right? And if you don't know who I'm talking about, man, you are really, really, really fortunate. As a person who has to live on social media to a degree, for business purposes, and familiarize myself with these people and in these spaces or whatnot, I came across Chud the Builder. It had to be about maybe let's 4, 6, 8 months ago. And first thing I realized is this is just an untalented guy. He's an untalented guy who stumbled upon this magic secret that if you go off and racially harass black people, people will watch you do it. And not only will they watch you do it, they will laugh about it and share it. And it's an easy way to go viral. It's an easy way to get those kind of hate clicks up, where you're not only are the people that really align with what you're doing fuck with you, but then also the people that don't really align with what you're doing are sharing your stuff, and it goes viral that way. And so it's the entire negative attention thing. Like I said, um a thoroughly how do I put it? He is a thoroughly Chud was a thoroughly untalented individual. He just stumbled into let me go provoke these black people and then threaten them with a gun, and people think it's funny. I knew from the beginning that if you are a gun owner and um, you spent any time around guns or anything, in most states you cannot walk out and instigate a fight or try to provoke somebody into a physical confrontation, even verbally, even if it's just words. You cannot go out there and try to provoke somebody into a physical confrontation and then shoot them and say it's self-defense. It doesn't work like that. There are different fighting words, clauses, even pulling your gun out in some places, pulling a weapon out and threatening to use it against somebody can be brandishing in some locations. In Tennessee, specifically where this dude was at, I said it was aggravated. It was aggravated assault charge that he could have been charged for at any point in time, because he's walking around intentionally trying to provoke people into a reaction and then pulling his gun out. Like this is aggravated assault, and realistically, it could have really gone a different way for him if he encountered another armed person who he had threatened. Because once you make that threat, it kind of changes the game. And so I've been saying this stuff on social media, like this dude is really kind of skirting. He's kind of playing in a weird legal gray area that's not necessarily built, designed the way that he thinks it is. And so he walk around. I think it was Nashville. A lot of the stuff was in Nashville. Walking around, finding black people, and then hitting with racial slurs. And here's what the issue was, and this is why I have I never had any regard for dude, but he was actually, it wasn't just, you see the videos and it was black men that he's going after, right? He's going after men. But the stuff you didn't see is there are women and children that he targeted. He targeted black children with racial slurs, and then threatened them in the same manner. You just never really saw that, or that wasn't his broadcast. But it was really this weird, I'm going to try to provoke somebody into a physical confrontation and then use my gun on them and say it was self-defense. And he's talking about spraying people with mace and shooting people and all kinds of other stuff after he provoked them. And a lot of people, when they did the behind the scenes of it, and they interviewed people that had interacted with him, they said, I was out minding my own business and this dude just starts calling me slurs. And I turn around and say, what? And then that's where the camera comes on, and then he starts talking about he's going to shoot me, and then continues to ramp up the slurs. And he had been building kind of towards this escalation because, like I said, he's not necessarily a smart dude or a talented dude. He just found a way to get attention. And I think there's a toxicity of the attention side of things. I talked about it I think it might have been last week. Just in general, this idea on specifically on TikTok, where somebody creates a format and then everybody copies that format. And the original person that created a format or a meme or a trend or a bit, a segment, that original person gets lost in the shuffle because everybody's copying it, and it's not even people putting their own spin on it. They're just doing it word for word, bar for bar, word for word, and posting it. And that's what I think is probably going to happen with Chud the Builder. Like I said, I could see another person doing this. For those that don't know, and I haven't gone into the whole details about this thing. Hi. Thanks for jumping on. I haven't gone into the whole details about this thing, about the details of what finally got him arrested, and gave a little bit of backstory. I haven't done that piece of it yet, but there's going to be somebody that copies him, and that's going to be the game. And we're going to start seeing duplicates of Chud crash test dummying out. And that's why the people, it was an L on the behalf of the authorities in Tennessee, because they could have picked him up before it escalated to the point where he actually shot somebody with PTSD. He shot somebody who had PTSD after provoking them with racial slurs. And he was told that the guy told him, I have PTSD, and he kept harassing him. And the guy snapped, he punched him, and Chud shot him. And now you have a family that is reeling with this. Apparently this guy's kids are messed up because their dad got shot, apparently. Hi, how you doing? And it was really, this whole thing was preventable. And like I said, I'm not here to talk about he said the N-word bad. I don't really care about, like, I'm moved past that point of it. I'm talking about, you are intentionally targeting a narrow group of people for harassment and recording it without their consent, more or less. Hey, Mike, how's it going, man? Thanks for tuning in. We see a guy who goes out, harasses people, and records them without their consent so he can line his pockets with it, right? And I know he got kicked off of pretty much every major podcast. Like, in order to get kicked off of Kick, you have to be on some diabolical, like, you got to be diabolical, or Kick's got to say, okay, this person's enough of a threat that I need to actually remove them from the platform. Okay. But people watched and were entertained, and they shared it. Some people were outraged and they hate shared it, because that's a thing that happens in these spaces. The danger is well obvious before this. I knew that this was the natural terminus of this. And this dude was even talking about, he's hyping himself up. Like, he's talking about, I'm gonna blow somebody's brain up. Like, he was charging himself up about it. He was gearing himself up. And not long before he ended up shooting the brother, I forgot what town in Tennessee it was, outside of a courtroom. He ended up shooting the dude. He was gassing himself up, like he was ramping up towards, he called it the series finale. Okay. And here's the thing. Black folks are burdened with, we have to stay calm. We have to not react. I can't escalate this. I can't give them what they want. Meanwhile, this dude gets to just berate us in public. He gets to hound and harass, which is, I'm still saying this, is illegal in and of itself. You can't walk up to somebody and try to provoke a fight with them and flash a gun and threaten to shoot them. That's not legal, bro. Like, they could have picked him up before then, but they didn't. They allowed somebody to get actually harmed before they took action. And now you go to Chud's GoFundMe or whatever the damn thing is called. And yeah, it's doing numbers. Like, because that's the game that's afoot here. And so you have a lot of people that sit around and they fantasize about this kind of stuff. And I don't know if you guys have seen the movie, the movie, was it Falling Down by Michael Douglas? Like, a lot of people have that falling down kind of fantasy where they're going to rage out against all the groups that piss them off. And so they're kind of living vicariously through Chud the Builder doing this stuff. I knew he was going to jail as soon as it happened. As soon as John, I'm like, oh, that's what they're waiting on. And the unfortunate part is, this could have been prevented if the authorities had intervened earlier. This could have been prevented. But again, he targeted Black folks with this. I'm throwing this out there. Ain't no Black person could walk around with a camera threatening to shoot a bunch of anybody in public, but let alone white dudes. If a Black dude walked around like Chud the Builder, and just literally, that's all he did multiple times. He live streamed it to millions of people. They would have him mop the paint. Like, he would be public enemy number one. And they would be trying to take him off the streets. It was assumed that what he was doing was kind of this, well, he's just threatening. He hasn't done anything yet. And there was a level of where, well, it's not harm yet. But imagine you walking out your house and somebody just, a stranger, you minding your own business. You out there with your kids and some stranger just starts calling you slurs. How are you supposed to react to that? And I keep going back to this. I have to circle this point. I got to circle this point. He just wasn't targeting adults. There's a lady that said he walked up to her kids, her children, not teenagers, children, and started calling them slurs. And when she's like, why are you doing that? He basically, what you gonna do about it? That's bully behavior. That is a person that feels like I can bully people with my gun and all this other stuff. Crazy work. So and it's not a free speech thing, right? Like, again, it's against the law. What he's doing is against the actual law. It's not just he's saying the forbidden word, it's him actually going out and threatening to harm people after trying to provoke them. So the warning sign isn't less real because it hasn't turned into a casualty yet, right? The signpost was flashing pretty widely and loud. Hey, how's it going? Nice to see you again. Yeah, we got a couple of people. Mike, what's going on, man? Like, drop some in the chat if you're in watching. Say what's up. We're talking Chud the Builder. And how this was kind of a inevitable. It was kind of the inevitable thing. And it goes to a larger piece of how violence or threats of violence are almost framed as entertainment in the news cycle. It always has been that. But it also kind of gives a distorted sense of how much violence there actually is in the world, because when you look at like crime statistics, like people like to quote, violence is actually trending down. We just see it on the 24-hour news loop, and we're seeing it affect narrowly targeted communities. And so the other side is Chud the Builder kind of falls into that Trap Lord Ross kind of thing for me, where it's exploitative of it's exploitative of Black people and using us as kind of entertainment, and we're not really viewed as humans. It removes our humanity, to be honest with you. But the thing is, he flattened harassment into free speech, and it was really avoiding responsibility for him. It was targeted behavior, it's repetition, and intimidation. You couldn't do most people couldn't just walk around doing this. Like, you can't just walk around calling somebody out their name, and then when they say, "What did you say to me?" you flash your gun or threaten to actually shoot them and expect that you're not going to have some kind of police contact at some point in time. That is not legal. That is not protected speech. I'm sorry, y'all. And then you're creating fear or discomfort, and you're singling out one person or one group. Sorry. And so I think people try to minimize what he actually did. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he got some slap on the wrist for this, and he's out in a year or something trying to rebuild what he lost. Okay. And I think we got to get past this concept of racial slurs and public confrontations aren't just edgy speech. Okay. These could be considered threats of intimidation, especially the way that he rolled with them, because he tied them to, if you say anything, or if you challenge me on this, I'm going to shoot you. And I think that's the component that people are necessarily missing. But it's content driven harassment. Like, he actually got paid from platforms who were running ads on his content, and they put money in his pocket to do this. And so now you have major corporations that are by proxy paying him to do this. It's a whole mess. And like I said, lots of people could have stepped in before to prevent this. Okay. And they set it up so that the Black person who, because it was always Black people, like I seen him go after a couple of white dudes, but it was always like, you punk or beta or whatever. But it was never like really targeted trying to provoke them into a reaction. The only people he really did that with was Black folks. And it was content driven. Like, again, there's going to be like, I don't know how many people are going to have to go out here and get hurt for the vibes, but I've seen kick streams where little dudes walking around in Miami harassing people and hitting people and ended up getting slapped up. Like I don't know who he was or whatnot, but he was walking around snatching food off of people's plates and all kinds of other stuff just so that he could get attention on social media. At some point in time, there's something desperately broken with you where you need that level of attention all the time for really providing nothing. You're not doing anything that requires any talent. You're not necessarily entertaining. You're just somebody out there for the vibes. It's not even Jackass. It's not even like Johnny Knoxville. Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. This is Jackass level of stuff. You know, this is I'm going out there and deliberately ruining somebody's day or actually interjecting stress into their existence for no real reason. Okay. So whatever with the Chud thing, I don't know. Dude's in jail. Dalton Etherly, I think that's his real name. I am not putting him up on my screen. If you don't know who he is, you can you can find his mugshot online somewhere. I am not putting that not putting that dickhead on my show. That's just it. But he's in jail now. I'm actually I had a longer video about this entire thing. That's kind of my reaction to when he got arrested. That actually should be I uploaded it. It should be going live here pretty short. It should be available for you to check out. But it's more my longer thoughts about the Chud the Builder thing. It sucks. And it's kind of like it's one of those things that gives you a little bit of it kind of dims your view of reality a little bit. It is what it is. All right. So a hard pivot. So this is kind of a character issues thing, and I was kind of thinking about this. It's something that's been on my mind and on my heart. And I actually wrote a long time ago when I used to write blogs about comic book characters and fictional and stuff like that. You know, I was really leaning into my writing bag. I wrote this entire piece, you know, and it was called, I think it was Black Lives Matter in the age of, you know, comic books or whatnot, or comic books in the age of Black Lives Matter or whatever. And so one of the pieces was the seeing how black characters exist in isolation in works of media is always kind of a jarring thing. Um, and so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this. And so, and it's really kind of jumping off on me because I'm actually those that don't know, I'm rereading Stephen King's Dark Tower series. Just because it's one of my favorite works of fiction, so I'm rereading the whole thing and kind of talking about it as I progress through the books. And one of the things that was really interesting is the black character, who's one of the main characters, Susanna. Um, Susanna is in this place, and I remember because she has a split personality. If you don't know the lore of the Dark Tower, you know, one of the main characters is Susanna. Susanna has a split personality, and so Susanna represents the merged side of the personality of, I think it's Odetta Walker and Detta Holmes. I could be flipping it around. I could be saying it could be Detta Walker and Odetta Holmes. Odetta Holmes was you know, she was active in the civil rights era and things along those lines. She had lost both of her legs under her knees after being attacked by this serial killer or whatnot. And more or less, she had interacted with him twice in her life. I'm trying not to get too far into spoilers. She interacted with him twice in life, and basically, one was a massive head trauma, and it caused a split personality. Now, I understand that this is a book of fiction, and so if you're looking for the scientific side of things, you're probably not going to find it there. But anyway, long story short, when they first introduced Odetta Holmes into the story, and it's something I picked up on real quick. I realized, you know, in hindsight, realizing that a lot of times white authors, when when they feel like they have a black character, um, they may not necessarily know or feel like they have a level of insight into how black folks talk or interact with one another. And so immediately you're going to take this black, brown, indigenous character and remove them from the group of other black, brown, and indigenous people and drop them into where they're the only black, brown, or indigenous person in this group of white folks. And that's what they did with Odetta. So Stephen King never really had to write her interacting with other black people unless it was in a flashback and she's talking directly to her mom or dad. And you see that pretty often. I see it in comic books specifically because it's more interesting in comic books because every hero has their own individual story, individual narrative, or whatnot. And oftentimes they're introduced. And so you have to understand, you are immersed in their backstory and in their lore and in their community and stuff. And it just is a jarring thing. And one of the things that jumped out at me was I was reading, it had to be Hudlin when he did the Marriage of Storm and Black Panther. Hold on one second. I'll get to your comment in 1 second. The thing that really jumped out at me was the Marriage of Storm and Black Panther. And one of the pieces in there, one of the bits in there that was really interesting was they had and those that don't know, the Red, White, and Black, I believe that it was. I can never remember the author's name, even though I've read it 1,000 times. Basically, it's Captain America, the Truth, Red, White, and Black. And basically, it's we've taken the Captain America mythos and introduced it into the introduced the Tuskegee experiment into it. And basically, it's about a group of black super soldiers that underwent the Captain America treatment or whatnot, and it's kind of their story. So anyway, one of the main characters in that story is and it's not Isaiah Bradley. Yeah, it is. It's Isaiah Bradley. Isaiah Bradley is one of the main characters in there, and Isaiah Bradley was the first black Captain America, and so when he's a guest at Storm and Black Panther's wedding, he is a guest of honor, right? The nuance that I loved in that story, way it was written, was the black characters really were in reverence. Like all the black heroes were in reverence of him, in awe of him. And a lot of the white characters didn't have a clue of who he was, because a lot of times we have people in our community that we hold in reverence, and if you're not in community with black folks, you're not going to know who these people are. And that's kind of how it was reflected. All right, hold on. Let me get into some comments here. I love diversity, but the thing about black people is they can be just like white people, but they can also be black and have a black culture. I think, I think the piece I'm getting to is there's no such thing as acting black, but black experience is something you can never really ignore. That's true. There's a level of familiarity within a community. Just idioms, and like this story where Isaiah Bradley was kind of held in reverence amongst the black heroes, and a lot of the white heroes didn't really know who he was. There are little beats that are subtle like that. I was sitting there, I remember sitting there watching, it had to be CW's Flash or something. I'm like, where bro get shaped up at? You know what I'm saying? I'm having these conversations, where does he get hair care product from? It sounds with white people. And so little nuances like that, where we're not just in isolation. And I think oftentimes it's easier to take that black person or indigenous person or person of color and drop them and treat them like they are just an island unto themselves. They don't have any friends, they don't have any family, ain't got no people, and they're just there, and we never hear anything about them. And it kind of reduces their character to simply somebody who just exists in the periphery of the white characters that we're supposed to care about. So here's it, and I'm talking narrowly about black characters because that's Blerding While Dad. And so the pattern is you got one black character surrounded by white folks in white spaces. And emotional reference points that don't really necessarily center that character, and there's not really they don't really show the dynamic, the black family dynamic. You never get a chance to see their friend group or anything along those lines, or the other people that they hang out with when they're not around this said group of white folks, and there's no interaction with their own community. And so you never get a sense of where that character came from, and it rings hollow. That's why when they took Static and rolled out the cartoon Static Shock, that was pretty dope. Like, you got a chance, when they animated the Dakotaverse, you actually got a chance to see a black character in community with other black folks, but also white folks, but also Latino folks and stuff like that. And we treated each group like it had its own community, but then it had a larger community that was a part of. I thought that was dope. And I think the reason why this happens is some writers don't really know how black folks interact and white folks aren't around, and so they just avoid it. It's kind of like the whole thing. My argument for Cyborg a long time ago was this. I feel like we had a character of Cyborg, and I feel like what happened with him was we don't necessarily know how to write a convincing black teenager, so we're just going to age him up and put him in the Justice League. That's what I think would happen with Cyborg. And it's unfortunate, but at least somebody had some awareness to know we don't necessarily know how to write this character. The only thing is like, so why not bring in a, a black comic book writer who we do, they do exist. I would like to be amongst their number, and have them narrowly write for Cyborg at the time. Now, this is, when they were kind of really revamping Justice League and trying to modernize it, and they said, let's put Cyborg in the Justice League for whatever reason. I like Cyborg in the Teen Titans, whatever. But, for whatever reason, because I remember, even on, what was it, the Challenge of Super Friends or whatever, where they're fighting Darkseid, and Cyborg is just randomly on the team as a grown man. And I know that he's an older teenager. I became familiar with him as an older teenager in the Teen Titans books. But I think that's what happens a lot of times. You have this character that is not white, that the author may not necessarily feel comfortable writing them interacting with other people of whatever their cultural group is, and so they just put them in isolation. They're just there by themselves on an island, and so that's what happens. And here's the thing. I know that we're probably going to get somebody like, well, what about black characters writing white characters? The one thing that I need to understand is, one thing I need to get y'all to understand is this. And I want you to understand this. Black, brown, and indigenous people, we often have to, in order to interact, in order to make it through this society, we often have to code switch, or not even code switch, but we have to be able to operate in a world that is considered, white, more or less. We have to learn how to operate. We have to know how to operate and navigate white spaces, and know white mores and ways that white folks interact with one another and stuff like that, and kind of mask to a degree. And that's just how it goes. And so when we write white characters, it comes from, now, when we write white characters, it comes from that knowledge of we have to live in a white world. Like, we got to exist. We have to know how to exist in white spaces. White folks don't necessarily have to exist in other spaces like that. They're not forced to on a daily basis. And so there's a lot of resources to figure out how to write characters now. There is, I think, one of the best resources is ask a person, if you're writing a character that you don't share cultural identity with, then either find somebody to help you write them and use them as and help them shape the character, or just bring on somebody to write that specific character. It's kind of cool to add a black character, even if you don't know how to write black people for corporations like Marvel and DC. There's no excuse. I think the other side is they realize that there are black people in their audience that are paying them money. And so, when you're paying somebody, when you have a group, that said group of people in your space and in your audience paying you money, you need to write characters that represent them. Black people are in the audience. Black people read comic books forever. It's only recently that these corporations have noticed it, but we read comic books, we go watch movies just like everybody else. And so, yeah, put us in, allow one of us to be on the screen. You have to write stuff for the audience too. And the audience, I think a lot of times it's assumed that the audience is just narrowly white folks, and that's not the case. Okay. And so, Marvel and DC, they're not dumb. Well, DC kind of is, because they're kind of getting called out for not having any black characters on a flagship book for, we're going on almost 3 years now, I think, where they have their own standalone book that's not a mini series, that's not in an alternate reality, that's a mainline DC ongoing book. There's absence of black folks. And I know they'll say, well, black comics don't sell and blah, 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 blah. But a lot of times when you realize how the comic book industry works, black comics don't even get, if the comic book shop ain't ordering it, it gets really, really hard to gauge what comic books sell and what comic books that don't, because the comic book shop is really the ones that are shaping the reading consumption patterns of people who only read comic books from comic book shops, who still go out and get the physical media. So I don't want to get into that side of it. So what happens is the writers don't know how to write black interactions or whatnot, or how they think black people interact, and they don't want to look foolish, and I get it. You don't want to write in something that's unfamiliar with you, but at the same time, they don't take that extra step and add, and so they don't get to take the extra step and ask. And so they can write racism, trauma, and conflict and outsider status. And that's what happened with Stephen King when he wrote Susanna Dean, Odetta Walker, Odetta Holmes. When he was writing that character in isolation, I feel like he didn't necessarily feel confident. He had her voice, but he didn't have the voice of a lot of other black people that would have been in community with her. And so when you see that character in the Dark Tower books, it's all, more times than not, it's her talking to a white person, even though she was a civil rights worker, and she would have been in conversations with other black folks. And I'm saying this because Stephen King was still one of my favorite authors, and we can't say, well, they would have just been minor characters. There are so many minor characters in the Dark Tower that they have to make a wiki just so you can keep up with who is who. They have, they may have 1 or 2 lines in the whole series, but they still have a wiki article to them. The only one that doesn't, there aren't any minor black characters in the Dark Tower series. Okay. All right. So, but yeah, and I understand it's a blind spot, and I understand, because as a writer, I understand I don't know, I don't get dialogue. I understand dialogue. I don't know the physical, like for me, the physical rules of writing dialogue are hard. And so I can't just not write dialogue when I'm writing stuff. So I have to kind of suck it up and use a resource to help me write dialogue. Just the physical rules of how dialogue looks on page has always been confounding to me. I know the rules, but it just always looks weird to me. And so you get help. So if you have a character if you create a character that you don't share a cultural identity with, then you need to find either a person or somebody you could talk to consult with, to make sure that this character aligns with that cultural identity. Because a lot of times that's what happens to black characters. We just snatch them out from all the other black people and have them standing in a bubble in isolation where they interact with no other black people. They just interact with white folks in the book. All right, comment. When franchises race swap characters and comic adaptations for modern audiences, does it feel patronizing? No. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because it didn't feel patronizing when for the last 120 years that we've had visual media. Every time that we see Cleopatra or John Wayne playing Genghis Khan and all the other stuff, um, you know, it wasn't if it wasn't patronizing then, which it was, but I think it is a degree of, okay, so now it's no fun when the rabbit got the gun. Now, I will say this. Um, I don't get mad about it because these are fictional characters. That's one. Two, unless there is a necessary reason for this character to be this race, I feel like it's kind of a free game kind of thing. You can move characters around as you want. Now, like if we're talking about like Storm, who has a very African past, and I know there are white people in Africa before any smart asses jump on here, but has a very African past, and stuff like that, where a lot of her character is based on being black. Like you got it, like swapping out that character doesn't make any sense. Okay. um there's a couple of other examples like Sunfire. He's Japanese. You can't just swap him out because a lot of his character is built on being Japanese. But they ain't got no problem with Sunspot making Sunspot a light-skinned Brazilian, or he's Afro-Brazilian, bro. Like they've done it before. And so I don't necessarily feel like it's patronizing. I feel like people expect they feel a certain kind of way about it. And I don't know. I just don't think it's necessarily insulting. I think it's insulting when the character is presented poorly. Like, when they swapped when I was mad, I wasn't even mad on the Gunslinger with the Dark Tower, when they actually decided to make a movie out of it and fumble that franchise to hell. They brought in Idris. He was perfect for the role of Roland. I don't have an issue with that piece of it. I think it's more how the person that you swap into the role does and carries the role forward. But I know people were mad about the black Superman, and it's like, so what race were Superman? Like, when last time we did a census on Krypton, what race were Kryptonians? Some characters' races don't hit the way I like them to. They made Green Goblin black in a game and was kind of based. I don't gel with Ace and Hulk. I did because I liked the character of Amadeus Cho. Amadeus Cho was a dope ass character, and when you were in the Hulk, when you are in the Hulk family, you're going to be a Hulk at some point in time. You just get Rick Jones. He was going to be a Hulk at some point in time. Amadeus Cho was going to be a Hulk at some point in time, and so I didn't get mad about it. I don't get mad about legacy characters being legacy characters. I think legacy characters allow you to take an existing character and add a new spin to them. That's I did a couple weeks ago talking about Shiloh Norman. Shiloh Norman, Mr. Miracle 3, I believe. Jack Kirby created Shiloh Norman as a black character who was a disciple of Mr. Miracle, a student of Mr. Miracle 1 and 2. Okay. But when they did it, people were acting like he was just this brand new character. Why you gotta make Mr. Miracle black? Well, I mean, he was the apprentice of Scott Free, and I forgot what the name of the original Mr. Miracle was, but he was the apprentice of both of them. Wouldn't it make sense, if you're going to kill off the new gods, that he's going to be the new Mr. Miracle? He already existed. He's not a made-up character. He's just black. I think legacy characters do have a space in that. And I think legacy characters allow you to take an existing character and add a new spin to it. Just like Captain America as a legacy character, where we have Captain America Bucky, we have Captain America Sam. Both bring their own dimensions to the character, the role of Captain America when they fulfilled that role of Captain America. They had different personalities than Steve Rogers. Okay. Miles Morales, Spider-Man, a completely different take on the character of Spider-Man. I think it adds a layer of nuance to existing characters. Black Batman works incredibly well. Black Superman doesn't matter because he doesn't represent a race. He represents the goodness of humanity. Yeah, and I also think we can make what was it Val Zod, who is the Black Superman? They made him interesting. President Superman, he was interesting. But there was there was the Sunshine Superman, who was if you look up the Sunshine Superman. He was a Black Superman. Like he's been around for a while. He wasn't major where they had the Sunshine Superman and he was like this major character, but he existed. And he was the Black hippie Superman. I saw it. Yeah, he's the Black hippie Superman. I don't have a problem with legacy characters taking on other races. They can make it easy. I think it was Steve Rogers. Let's see. You make him a woman. As long as you keep the same beats of the character, I mean, you can reimagine a character anyway. Look at what they're doing with Absolute Batman, where Batman hasn't been interesting like this as a character in a long time. And they changed a lot of the way he grew up. Make Catwoman black. It doesn't, it actually fits the tone of the book. Okay. I don't care about color and ethnicity. I just hope they don't make them fat or something like that. A fat superhero will be silly. I don't think so. Because when we talk about fat superheroes, if we're talking about raw strength, and I'm telling you this as somebody who lifts heavy things for fun, um, taking some time off, but for a while I was actively trying to get my deadlift back above 600 pounds. If you're talking about some of the strongest individuals walking around the planet, there are some anomalies, but if you're looking at powerlifting physiques and powerlifter builds of people who have to express strength, who have to express raw strength, there's fat on them because mass moves mass. Being ripped and jacked, it's strong. I'm not discounting bodybuilder strength or anything. I'm not discounting that at all. But when we're talking about raw strength, even look at Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall has a gut. That gut is muscle. That his core is absolutely insane. But he does have that adipose tissue on there. If you see me in public, you're like, big fat guy, but you talk to the doctor, your muscle mass is there. You just carry it different. And so I don't have a problem with fat superheroes. I don't think the aesthetics to me matter as much. Are they interesting characters? Hell, I mean, I sit there and watch what was it? We TV or Me TV or whatever. And I watch old episodes of Canon where they have the dude from Jake and the Fat Man. And this dude is a police detective. And they have this poor man running every episode. Every episode, he's chasing some perp down. This man has to be in his mid 40s with a beer belly, and he's chasing people down actively. They don't use stunt doubles or anything. This dude is running behind. He always has a chase scene where he's on foot chasing people. So I don't think the aesthetics matter as much. Matter of fact, I think sometimes the aesthetics can get boring sometimes, and I think that's what happened during the speculator craze in the 90s. All the women pretty much looked the same, no matter what the race was, their ethnicity, background. They all looked the same. all had the same dimensions. All the men looked the same. You had some that were bigger, some that were smaller, but they all pretty much looked the same. And it ended up killing a lot of people's interest in comic books. Kind of. I would be okay if they allow a trans legacy character, if Superman were a woman pretending to be a man. I would think that you got Loki. Loki exists, man. And Loki has been multiple genders, but Loki's always been Loki. Nobody tripped off of it. Yeah, if you look up powerlifting in the dictionary, it'll be a picture of Mark Henry. And Mark Henry was you look at him like, man, if you're looking at the aesthetics of how we classify strength in pop culture, it doesn't necessarily match what strength in the real world is. Mark Henry was damn near, it was over 300 pounds. This dude was dunking basketballs and doing insane feats of strength because Vince McMahon was psychotic and was just having him do anything to get the spectacle and get the camera on him. Mark Henry was a freakishly strong man in a sport that has freakishly strong men. And he doesn't fit the bodybuilder aesthetic, but he was in a locker room full of bodybuilders. He's stronger than the vast majority of them. So I don't necessarily mind the fat superhero. I think there's characters there's all kinds of characters that can fit as long as the story is good and it makes sense. Nah, that's not true. That's not true. That there's you can't use that heuristic, because more times than not, when you see like somebody that's like shredded, that's not necessarily natural. By times, that's where you do get into a little bit of the supplements that people don't want to talk about, but also shredded muscle guys and shredded muscle girls, typically when you see them in magazines and stuff, that is dehydration. They're completely dehydrated and a bunch of other very unnatural stuff. You want to see the most unhealthy shit on the planet, sit around and watch how professional bodybuilders, a lot of them have to eat and deal with their disordered eating and stuff like that, and some of the other stuff they have to do. And there are bodybuilders and powerlifters that won't do tested competitions. I understand they won't do tested competitions. Those are the ones you got to look at, but the gut isn't necessarily an indicator. We're looking at, I'm looking at back knee. If you want to know somebody who is absolutely juiced, who's absolutely on something, look at RFK. Look at RFK. That ain't natural. I'm telling you, that's not natural. I'll put, like I said, I will wager nothing on it, but that's not natural. And he is jacked and he's shredded, and ain't none of that natural. None of it is. I can't blame Vince. Henry was strong. He was a good spectacle. Like, this man could bend a quarter. Like, he's in there bending a quarter. He was mad because he couldn't tear a quarter with his bare hands, but people watching him there with his bare hands bending a quarter. Are you serious? People forget. Yeah, lifting for strength doesn't correlate to combat strength. Bruce Lee would delete most bodybuilders. Bruce Lee was on record saying that a fighter like Muhammad Ali would kill him because, Muhammad Ali was much, much bigger than he was. So, it goes to a point like, yeah, just because you're big doesn't mean that you can throw a punch, but just because you're big doesn't mean that you can't throw a punch. And there is something that is the great equalizer, getting snatched up in the air and dropped on top of your head. That's a great equalizer, and I've seen it happen plenty of times. You seen RFK doing pull up? I've seen that. Just because he's doing that doesn't mean. I've seen lots of guys that were on gear do all kinds of like regular workouts. It doesn't mean, the thing we got to understand about steroids and all the other stuff. And I'm not trying to get my thing. I'm not trying to get this answer, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. The thing is, you can't start that stuff and not be working out and expect to have the muscles and all the other stuff. It just doesn't work like that. You still got to work out. And a lot of times, if you're not a strong guy, just taking steroids and lifting weights isn't going to make you a strong guy unless you're on some kind of program or something. It's not going to give you the strength advantage over people that train consistently and stuff. Now, if you train consistently, it could take you from, the way I use it is like the way I'll phrase it is, the all the drugs, supplements, everything. If you're already a strong individual who works out all the time, it could take you from great to really great, but it's not going to take you from good to great. RFK still works out. There's no way that man has that kind of muscle tone at his age. It just doesn't work like that. And to put it on, to build it, like to bulk the way that he has, that doesn't happen naturally. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. He's doing the work, maybe with some assistance, but he got discipline too. Yeah, but then also, the billions and the billions of Kennedy money that helps too. It's probably the reason why he's still alive after eating roadkill, bro. Like eating dead roadkill and eating roadkill is rotting on the side of the road. Like you got to have some kind of medical something. Mass matters. Yeah, mass moves mass. Here's the thing. So I tell people all the time, like I'll go through cycles. Like I can lose weight relative for a long time. I could lose weight relatively easy. Um, and so if I wanted to maintain my strength, I had to watch. Like I would have to actively watch my calories and actually eat more. Because what happens is, as I started losing weight and getting more ripped, like getting more development and more definition and everything, I was actually actively losing strength. Like those couple of pounds matter. Bruce Lee would get fucked up if he attacked Mark Henry. Yeah, yeah. I mean, Bruce Lee knew what he could do and what he couldn't do, right? And there's a reason why there are weight classes in combat sports. Because at some point, the weight does come into play, especially when you're talking about higher level combat fighters and stuff. More professionals. There's weight classes for a reason. You're not going to see the best flyweight on the planet isn't going to beat up the 120th ranked heavyweight in the world. It's just not going to happen. There are weight classes for a reason. Muhammad Ali wasn't just big; he could move. Yeah, he could move, but what I'm saying is that's where it goes into. Weight classes exist for a reason. Sorry if I'm I'm spending a little bit of time on each comment, but yeah, weight classes exist in sports, in lifting, like powerlifting. There's weight classes for a reason. In combat sports, there's weight classes for an actual reason. Because no matter how good you are, at some point, size and weight do come into play. Okay, it just it is what it is. That's why, here's the thing. That's why Brock Lesnar was able to brute force his way for a while. He's able to brute force his way to heavyweight titles in the UFC. He's a big son of a gun, but he was also a heavyweight champion, like collegiate NCAA heavyweight wrestler. So he had that pedigree, and so he could just brute force more disciplined strikers that were just smaller than him. He could just ragdoll them. And so that's what he relied on. Good conversation. Let's keep going. Yeah, Brock got that Viking and them other hormones. Like I said, Brock is an absolute freak of nature. Like, I remember watching him in one of his UFC fights. They were doing the training side, and this dude, he had cut weight to 285 so he could make super heavyweight limit. If he cut down to 285, his walking around weight was over 300 pounds. I'm sitting there watching this dude work out. And it's kind of my inspiration to do it. Because I'm like, okay, I want to be like him doing the pull-ups. And so around 265, 285, I got to the point where I'd finish out my exercise. I finish out my workout with 4 sets of whatever. I think it was 4 sets of 5. No, it was longer. It was like I'm doing my other. It was 3 sets of 15 chin-ups. And so I was like 285, and that's how I finish every workout. Because I'm like, I wanted to be like Brock, so I trained to get to that point. Dude was freakishly strong, insanely strong, and he's a freak of nature. He's an outlier in terms of strength. Even at his age, he's an outlier. He's older than me. He's an outlier. Mark was sad about him. He didn't have a character until the Hall of Pain. I love the Hall of Pain too, bro. Like I feel like they fumbled so bad with the Hall of Pain. I think they could have done a lot with him because it was so menacing. It was, the entire way they brought him up on stage and the back, showing the audience, you're showing how big his back is, and he's going to come out and hurt people. And I think I feel like they could have done a little bit more with him. But then eventually they had to feed him to Cena, which is, I mean, everybody kind of gets fed to Cena at some point in time. But um, I think that they could have done a lot more with the Hall of Pain. I mean, I look at it like this. I think the Hurt Business was a generational fumble on WWE's part. Like that was a generational fumble. An absolutely like a massively missed opportunity. And you could have put Mark Henry as the manager or one of the heavies with the Hurt Business, man. Come on, man. No doubt he's doing more. Vikings don't give a shit about fairness. You damn right. And they brought him back. Like they brought Brock Lesnar back. Like they had Obafemi beat him cleanly. And I think they're gonna do kind of the Goldberg thing, the way that they did Goldberg and Brock Lesnar. They keep pushing Roman because Roman was what Triple H wanted to be. I think but Roman's also the most bankable. Like you put the camera on Roman, he is the guy. Like you put like you could put like he's the most bankable guy in terms of crossover appeal. Like you could put him in movies and stuff like that. Eventually, it's probably going to happen with Rhea Ripley too, where you start seeing her take on movie projects and things along those lines. That's why Roman gets the push. Vince fumbled Roman for a lot of years, bro. Like I think Roman would be talked about a lot on a lot higher basis if Vince wasn't so insistent on not letting him play the complete and total asshole he was in Florida Championship Wrestling. If they let him lean into really a little bit of what his real personality, cocky, arrogant. A cocky, arrogant, like, if they let him lean into that earlier instead of trying to make him like this superhero that, sold t-shirts and everything, I think that we would have Roman in a lot higher regard. Faked it till he made it. Yep. But he's still better. He's a lot better than when he started. Like I said, I wish that they would have let him be. Like there was a lot of guys that never really got a chance to shine in the way that they should have shown because Vince was too worried about having the hero good guy the kids could cheer for, not understanding that the entire thing is that Steve Austin proved that you can be the heel, but if you pull it off, if you carry it off the right way, you still will have fans. I feel like that's the fumble they're making with LA Knight right now too. I am way off my sorry, y'all. I'm a nerd and I got sidetracked with wrestling talk. We can keep it going, but I want to keep powering through. So I talked about Odetta and Susanna Walker and that thing, and I think Stephen King didn't necessarily know how to write her. And so representation isn't just putting a black character in the room. It means knowing who that where that black character came from and having a sense of it. They wasted. Yes, they absolutely wasted Cesaro. They wasted him in that Sheamus thing. Like since they hated tag teams, Cesaro and Sheamus's tag team was amazing, but they could have made him an absolute mauler and like a big, huge, grizzled individual that will hurt you. They could have 100% leaned into it. AEW is actually screwing up Cesaro right now too, bro. Like Claudio has not been interesting in AEW. I don't know if anybody knows how to use him. Yeah, because Claudio's super. Like he actually has that tier of freakish strength. He was super wasted. Yeah, I think they wasted him too. Yeah, about these bots jump on here all the time. But yeah, I think that they botched Cesaro, but he's getting botched right now too. Let's see. So I guess to wrap up what I was saying, give some get some depth to black and brown characters and not just have them as the only representative of their group in the room just because the writer doesn't necessarily know how to write them. Like I said, black folks have to exist in non-black spaces all the time. The inverse is not true of white writers all the time. And you see really weird stuff. Like even some of my favorite writers have some really, really, really weird ideas um, about black folks. Like I love, as much as I love Garth Ennis, like I always will have funk with him about Barracuda and some of the ways Barracuda acted in Punisher Max. Like it's just like he's just this weird stereotype. Um, who's the one that came up with the Black Hulk in Ultimate Marvel Universe? You remember the Black Hulk, who like the Black Hulk, where he was a nerd. He was a black nerd who became the Hulk, and all of a sudden he's a pimp and all kinds of other weird stuff. We could have kept that. We could have kept all of that. And I have a feeling that it's enemy of the channel, Mark Miller, who did that. It's on site with Mark Miller, bro. I'm not even gonna hold you. It's on site with Mark Miller, bro. Yeah, Leonard Williams, Tyrone Cash. Who created him, bro? Who created Tyrone Cash? I have a feeling it's Mark Miller, bro. It is Mark Miller. Damn it, I knew it. It's on site with Mark Miller, bro. Like the beef is real with that dude. I'm kind of on that Garth Ennis, like it's on site, bro. I think I think the thing that makes Cyborg hard to write is you have this black character who was a teenager and the white writer didn't know how to write a black teenager. And it was a mismatch. He didn't sound like David F. Walker. He did a lot of really, really good writing with Cyborg. Like his Cyborg series was phenomenal. And he captured the voice and tonation of a Cyborg. But for a long time, Cyborg existed as this weird black teenager off on his own that didn't have the voice of any black teenager that I knew. And there was a weird disconnect. I always had weird issues with how they presented Cyborg. I watched Cesaro pick up the Big Show and just walk from the center ring and dumped his ass over the top rope New Orleans at WrestleMania 30. It was legit one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. Right. Even though Big Show wanted to be picked up, that's impressive because I tore 3 muscles in my back watching that. Big son of a gun. I don't think so. I don't think people really understand the kind of strength it takes to pick people up and move them. Now, I watched Brock Lesnar pick up men that didn't want to be picked up. I watched Rampage Jackson back when he was fighting in Pride. I watched him pick up men who had been trained not to be picked up and muscled them up in the air and did like power bombs and stuff on them. That is absolutely freakishly insane strength. When you could pick up a wrestler who was trained not to be picked up, that's freakishly strong. Pick up Big Show by the ankles, right? And that's an awkward position too. Yeah, because your center of gravity is off, and it's a lot harder to pick things up. Like a lot of times when you're picking stuff up, like even in the weight room, the first thing you got to get is your root. You got to root your gravity. You got to get your center of gravity under control. Otherwise, you're going to have a failed lift. Even when you're doing bench, rooting your feet into the ground and really getting your sense of center of gravity established is going to be the difference between a big bench and a little bench. And so I think people don't understand a lot of times. It's just that mind muscle connection, and Cesaro had it. I watched him. Like I think it was a snatch. I think he did a 1-arm snatch on a barbell of like 135 pounds. Freak strength, bro. Like that is not normal levels of strength. I do think they wasted AJ Styles, but AJ Styles was getting wasted in TNA beforehand because they didn't know what the hell to do with him either. I think when they started the OC and all the other, not the OC, I think it was the I don't know. I think it was the OC. Where they had Gallows and Anderson. That's where it started getting weird. And they started playing around with that for a while, and then they backed off it. I think they could have used AJ Styles near the top of the card for a while. The thing is, though, AJ wasn't that he had his moments on the mic where you're just like, and I think that might have limited what he could do. But I do think he was wasted to a degree. Yeah, Cesaro's a freakishly strong individual, bro. I used to watch a lot of his feats of strength on YouTube and just trying to get some of his workout stuff. You're born with that kind of strength, or you're born with, I don't want to say you're born like you come out of the womb with that kind of strength. You're born with you either have the capacity to generate that kind of force production or you don't. And Cesaro has it. Dolph Ziggler. I think Dolph Ziggler became a victim of his own success. He could do everything so well that they put him in the ring to do everything so well. Like you needed somebody to sell who could sell like Grim Death. You could bring in Dolph Ziggler, and he was amazing at it. And he was so good that he ended up becoming the guy that needs to sell for everybody. Sami Zayn has fallen into that thing where Sami Zayn is so good at what he does that he ends up becoming the person you use to get the other people established. And I think Dolph Ziggler they could have put a title on him. They could have done a lot they could have really pushed Dolph Ziggler to the top of the card, but for whatever reason, Vince wasn't fucking with him like that. I don't understand why. I don't get it. I think they blew a chance with him in a way. But yeah, they blew a chance with him when they did that stupid cheerleading thing. That was terrible, bro. Like I don't understand, but like he saved his. It's amazing that he rebounded from that. It really is. But like I said, I think when I'm looking at all these other people that are getting misused, like I said, to me the generational fumble was the Hurt Business, bro. Um, you know, they could have done so much with it. They could have done so much with that. You know, not giving us the Hurt Business. Not giving us the Hurt Business versus the Bloodline was criminal. It was criminal. That would have been a lot better than what they, because the first conflict between the Bloodline was dope, but I think if you had the Hurt Business versus the Bloodline, oh god, that would have been amazing. That would have been amazing must see television, and they fumbled it. All right. So I'm gonna continue on. I can jump back into wrestling if you guys want, but I'm gonna continue on. I had some ADHD thing. I think I'm gonna do a more traditional video about that one, just because the vibe is high right now. I like the vibe right now. I don't want to drag. I don't want to bring it down with my depressing sad boy stuff. I have ADHD. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about it. I want to talk about the Drake release. Like Drake dropped them 3 albums. My feelings on Drake are pretty straightforward. I'm not a fan. I'm not the target demo, whatever. The thing with Drake, I was messing with Drake up until comeback season. I listened to the mixtapes up until comeback season. And then after comeback season, it just switched off for me. And so Drake has existed in this space where I'm like, yeah, he's the Taylor Swift of hip hop. He's the Michael Bublé of hip hop. He is the most popular rapper on the planet right now. And I get it. That's always been his kind of thing. That's been the albatross around his neck. I got a different take on that kind of the psychology, or just my take on how Drake is. So hold on one second. I got to pull up something here. So, and I can't remember the date. I fucked with Drake hard in high school, but he stuck around too long. Um, I think one of the things is my issue, and and this is just my take on Drake's music, and I'm jumping a little bit ahead of my notes. Um, but and for those that don't know, he dropped Iceman, Habiti, or whatever we say that, and Maid of Honor. I powered through listening to all three of them so I could have these opinions on it. So yeah. Um, I think Drake, when I look at Drake, I see a guy who is a hip hop head. He listened to a lot of the rappers I listen to. He, of course, I know he listened to Fonte from Little Brother because that's who he rhymed like. Like immediately after comeback season, he started rhyming like Elzai and Fonte from a Little Brother. But when it comes to Drake, I think he wanted the audience of hip hop heads who are like him, who are into like a little bit more underground, not as mainstream. I see him on, he's always on the battle rap stages and whatnot. And the audience that he got were the hip hop fans that he didn't want to be like, if that makes sense. So follow my line of logic on this one. He's trying to get into that pro era. So I agree. Drake wanted one audience, and he took over an audience that he didn't necessarily want. He's resentful that these aren't the same audiences. And so we're going to separate Aubrey Graham, the hip hop head, from Drake, the superstar rapper, a little bit. Okay. So Aubrey was a hip hop head. He was a rap nerd. There are hip hop nerds. There are gun nerds. There are rap nerds. Like these exist. There are different nerdisms and nerd communities for a lot of different interests. I talk about gun nerds all the time. They're nerds about guns. Just because they have guns, they think it doesn't make them nerds. They're nerds who like guns. That's what I'm getting into. And so I'm getting into that. Kendrick is what he wanted to be. So Drake was a hip hop head. Okay. He was always hanging around battle rappers. He always like I said, he had Elzai and Fontaine. You don't get deep cuts like Elzai and Fontaine guest starring on your album if you don't know something about hip hop. Okay. He listened to a lot of the rappers I listened to at that time. MF Doom, Little Brother, Slum Village. He wanted to like Most Def to a degree. Like he wanted those fans. He wanted fans of those MCs in his fan base. Like I said, watching him hover around battle rappers was weird, but I understood it. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be respected as one of those MCs that he grew up listening to. And what he got was soccer moms who have to make a playlist and stuff like that. So the audience he wanted was those the fans that listened to the stuff that he listened to. He seemed to want battle rap fans and people that were listening to bars, like people who bought the Slaughterhouse albums, were into Royce, had Joel Ortiz's mixtapes, had Crooked Eyes mixtapes. The hip hop heads, the hip hop nerds, the ones who bought mixtapes, the lyricism fans and stuff like that. And so the Dilla fans, all of them. So Roots, Little Brother, Royce, Elzai, Black Milk, Random Acts. If you're ever looking for an amazing record, amazing collab, Sean Price, Guilty Simpson, and Black Milk. It's called Random Acts, Random AXE. Amazing record. And even Joe, that I think one of the reasons why Joe Budden gets on his nerves, because he idolized Joe Budden, like, to a degree, and then the more modern fans, more modern era is going to be like your J. Cole fans, your Kendrick fans, mainstream rap fans who still want the bars. Okay. He didn't just want listeners. He wanted the fans of the kind of fans that he was. Okay. He wanted the kind of fan that he was. He wanted respect, but he wanted respect, but he captured the attention economy, and he didn't want them. And so the audience he actually got were like pop rap fans, like people who like a good sense of pop music, popular music, playlist listeners, casual hip hop fans, people that are listening for the vibes. Okay. Um, yeah, MF Doom is really good. He became the Backstreet Boys of rap. You could see some influences uh in like Capital C's and Kendrick. Like I think he wanted to be Drake fans are about to kill me for this. He wanted Kendrick's fans. He wanted his fans to be Kendrick's fans, like Kendrick's fan base. That's why it cuts hard for him. I think his feelings were hurt by Mos Def. When Mos Def said, "I listen, Drake is kind of music that you hear at Target to go shopping." Of course, the Joe Budden things pissed him off, and so I think that he wanted the esteem and respect of these rappers he looked up to, and they don't, and it bothers him. And so when he starts all this other stuff, when he starts all this, when like on the Iceman was really like it was kind of this weird bitchy whiny kind of thing. Like I give him room. I give Drake a lot of leeway because I expected him to come back and respond to the GNX stuff and all the stuff with Kendrick from a couple years ago. I expected that was going to happen. I think one of the issues is, and this is something that it really came across as like, if you're going to be mad about it, be mad about it and have the aggression in your bars. If you're going to act like it's not bothering you, then be nonchalant in your bars. What Drake did in his responses, especially on Iceman, it was this weird passive aggressive kind of tonation. It just all three albums felt like he was just getting these to get out of his contract, which they said it was. And these weren't really meant to stick around because he dropped 40 some odd tracks in total on those three albums. And it still doesn't measure up to the 12 that were on GNX. Like, when I listen to Drake's three albums, you're just like, okay, so is this it? I'm wanting a little bit more. Well, when you listen to those albums, you want more stuff you can kind of vibe with, but you kind of get tired of it after a while. Like, okay, enough, man. Like it took me an entire weekend to get through those three albums. It was a tough listen. When GNX, it's like, okay, I want another song, bro. Like I want another song. Like I would like to hear the stuff that didn't make GNX. I wanted to hear more. Like with Drake's albums, I had enough, kind of like it was enough, but you're still leaving wanting more. Whereas GNX, there was not enough, and you actually are actively craving more. Oh, don't do Tyler like that. Don't do Tyler like that. Don't do Tyler. When Tyler the Creator is on, Tyler the Creator is on. And so, and it took me a long time to warm up to the Odd Future kids. I still don't know where I necessarily fall with Earl, but Tyler, he grew on me over the years. My son was a big Tyler fan. Tyler grew on me. I think the edgelord stuff doesn't land as cleanly. But I also think he's still a relatively young guy, and I think he was living out his online edgelord phase in front of us on record. But Tyler is the one that's actually an artist. Like he has an ear and he actually really, really, really cares about what he puts out there. And I think to me that's refreshing where there's not this mercenary intent where I just got to drop this record. It's intentful when he drops it. He means for it to matter when he puts the stuff out there. And I think part of me, that's something that's really missing in hip hop where it's become so mercenary. It's not just hip hop. Rock music's going through the same fucking thing. Where it's super, super mercenary. Like incredibly mercenary. And people are just putting out bullshit to put it out. I think, like I said, Tyler, I think he's at this stage where he cultivated this fan base and a specific sound within that fan base, and that's that's what people expect of him, but it's not necessarily what he wants to do. And Tyler is actually an artist. I mess with Tyler, the creator. Like he's a fan of hip hop. I like that's why I can't as much as little I don't people see I clown Drake all the time. I don't have a lot of regard for Drake the MC. I might like Aubrey Graham. I think I probably would, because he's a hip hop nerd. I respect Tyler the creator because Tyler is a fan of this genre. He is a fan of the music, and we're seeing a lot of people that aren't fans of the music; they're fans of the vibe. That's where you get Aiden Ross and XQC. They're fans of the vibe, they're fans of the aesthetic, but they're not fans of the music. And so, and of the culture. They're not fans of that. They're fans of the vibe, and aesthetic. And so that's why that's why I always have love for Tyler, bro. Like watching him get excited about being called to drop pop up on the Clipses album and drop a verse still brings a smile to my face because he's a fan. He's geeking out. Joey, oh man. I get it. So like the way I like, okay, so I like Lupe Fiasco. I like some of his music. I don't like Lupe Fiasco. From what I've seen. I don't know him personally. It's not like I know Lupe. Like I don't have this parasocial thing where I hate him and I know him personally. I don't know him personally. But I like Lupe's music, but I'm not necessarily a fan of his music. There's some things I mess with, some things I don't. And I can see where Joey could be that person. I don't know what Joey did. So you're gonna tell me, what did Joey Badass do? You gotta tell me what, because I'm not familiar. Back to Drake. I think the tension he feels is he doesn't like the audience that is his biggest fan base that actually drives a lot of stuff. I don't think he would necessarily. I don't think from even a musical taste wise, I don't think he would align with a lot of what his audience likes. They like him, but I don't think he necessarily he would align with their tastes. Like his music library, his music catalog probably doesn't match what his audience likes. And he doesn't like that audience. I could see the resentment. I think when Drake says y'all, I don't think he's just talking to rappers. I feel like it's aimed at his fans because it's the fickleness of his fans. The fans that jumped over to follow Kendrick, where they didn't, the fans that weren't loyal to him. Like, I feel like he feels some kind of way about that. It's weird. But I think he cultivated a group of fans that he doesn't necessarily like. That's why it feels like a lot of his stuff is low effort, because he's just like, I'm just putting this out here and this is the stuff that they like. And so it's like you are a passionate burger chef, but you can only work at Burger King. At some point you're going to start phoning it in. And I think that's kind of where he's at. I don't think he respects I don't think he respects his largest fan base. I think and I'm not saying there are no hip hop heads in Drake's fan base. Don't get it twisted like that. But I don't think that they represent the kind of fan that he is of hip hop, if that makes sense. Okay. I think M fell into that pocket. Like, I think Eminem cultivated a fan base of people that he didn't necessarily like. His musical taste didn't align with his biggest fans. We see Eminem getting interviewed. One of the rappers he always shouts out is Redman. Like, he considers Redman one of the greatest rappers of all time. A lot of Eminem fans don't have the slightest clue who Redman is, and if they did, they probably wouldn't like his stuff. So I think Eminem kind of fell into that trend, fell into that pathway too, where he has a fan base full of people that don't align with his musical taste and things that he's a fan of. I think that's a lot of artists, to be honest with you, but those are the two that kind of pop up. Yeah, with Joe. So with Joe, he brought capital wrong the wrong people, and I feel like that's one of the reasons he died. But it's not really necessarily anything he did. It just gives me the ick. I understand that. Like Drake, the Millie Bobby Brown thing and Drake's weirdness around older teenage girls, um, younger teenage girls in general gives me the ick. I don't necessarily know that he's done anything with them, but the way that he acts around them and some of the public stuff that's come out, I just I don't have a lot of esteem for that. I don't have a lot of respect for it. So I get it. Um, but yeah, I think that uh Drake and him are kind of in that same boat where Eminem's largest fans don't like if Eminem sat down and talked to his biggest fans and compared what's in their favorite who their favorite artists are versus who his favorite artists are, he wouldn't find a lot of common ground outside of his stuff. He came up on uh Royce and Trick and a lot of those Detroit cats. And then you start expanding out and you start getting to like, Boot Camp Click and Helter Skelter and all them. And you could kind of see what informed Eminem's palette coming up. And a lot of his most diehard fans, they have no clue of who a lot of the people that Eminem cites as influences, like they wouldn't listen to them. They wouldn't like them. And I think Drake is kind of in that same boat. You became very mainstream. I think to the degree for an artist to survive, you have to have that level of it because um, the music industry is brutal enough. It's a lot easier now than it used to be to break in because they've kind of democratized a lot of entry points to the music industry. But one thing that has happened is they shorten the runway for a new artist to build an audience. And so you have to go after the biggest audience possible because your window to actually be the new artist on the scene is so damn small. Where it used to be you drop an album, you have a year or two to drop singles from that album and blah 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 blah. Especially in hip hop and R&B. Now you got 3 months to make shit happen. Otherwise, it's all over. And I think Joey Badass has found his staying power in he managed to still be Joey Badass that a lot the mixtape heads really enjoyed, but then crossed over and found a bigger audience. Came out when he was so good. Oh, are we talking about M or are we talking about Joey? Um, I think M just kind of became a victim of his own success. Like I said, I was one of the few people like around here where I'm at. I had the Slim Shady EP, the mixtape, before he was even signed to Aftermath. I had stuff from him being on the Wake Up Show. I actually had the freestyle that got him signed on tape and stuff. And so that was the Eminem I was familiar with, the one that was went up against Juice in the Rap Olympics and Rhyme Fest and all them. That was the Eminem that I was familiar with. Um, and I think again, it ended up becoming that natural byproduct of crossing over on television because they got used to that sound, that Dre sound, that Eminem over a Dre beat sound, and that's ended up becoming what informed everything. And I fell out of connection with M probably around his third album and didn't pick him back up for a couple of years. I was always a Royce fan. Like the first moment I heard Royce the 5'9" on the first Bad Meets Evil, the Bad Meets Evil song, I was in. But I even had the Bad Meets Evil EP by on Game Records, with Scary Movies, and a couple of other tracks. So I think M ended up like he had to lean into that for a little bit, and then he took his time. Like I said, the Bad Meets Evil album was something I had waited on for over 10 years when it finally dropped. The full length Bad Meets Evil. few rappers that could do anything he wanted, like a rapper wouldn't worry about systematic racism in the music industry. He is destined for it. Yeah, and I think, but he also, and M will probably tell you that he benefited to a degree. If we're talking about M, he benefited to a degree um, from like not taking away a skill, but he benefited from the anomaly of being the white rapper, because the white rapper's always gotten a bigger, like there's always been a little bit more interest in, like I'm a huge Beastie Boys fan, but they always had, there's always this, look at this kind of thing, like these white guys are rapping kind of thing with the Beastie Boys. That just happens. Hell, I mean, that's Third Base. And I'm a huge Third Base fan. But Third Base kind of got the benefit of that, of being the white rapper, in the proficient white rapper in doing the black genre of music. So there is some racial politics that do go into that. Not saying that's the only reason why M was famous or anything, but there is a layer of being the white rapper who can do the thing. That's why Justin Timberlake was considered an R&B singer for a while, and people are talking about Justin Timberlake versus Usher, because he's the blue-eyed soul, the white boy that could sing, and so they're going to elevate him to a degree. Not saying he doesn't have the talent, but he's the anomaly, if you will. And there's always space for the anomaly in black music. The non-black person that can who could perform the black music. That's always been kind of a thing. Again, I don't like to use the Vanilla Ice as always, but I mean, that did elevate Vanilla Ice to a degree. Just was what it was. He had a crossover appeal that no black rapper outside of MC Hammer could really compete with. But I look at the contemporaries that came out. The reason why Third Base, even though Third Base was huge, they didn't have the they didn't have the entire commercial aesthetic and appeal, kind of like a Vanilla Ice did. That makes sense. So let's talk. Like I said, with Drake, his empire was built on popularity, but he kind of shocked when his audience is a pop based audience. And I think that's always been the dichotomy. I don't think he necessarily likes his audience that way. Sorry. He wants his audience to be hip hop heads. He wants hip hop heads to love him and respect him and give him that same deference that they give, your Black Thoughts, or your Kendricks and stuff like that. And that's going to haunt him until he finally lets go of it and finally makes an actual hip hop record. Like, he decides to stop going with the Drake sound that sells a lot of records and gets back into his bag as an MC and leans more into the hip hop stuff. And I don't know if that ship is already sailed on him or not. Drake knows the medium, but he made it too easy. Yeah, he wanted the radio. Radio hits are easy for him, but I don't think he necessarily respects the radio hits. I don't know. Like I said, I'm psychoanalyzing a complete and utter stranger, and so that's parasocial of me. But that's just my take on listening to his music, seeing him in interviews and stuff like that, and knowing who the artists are that he considered his inspiration coming up. While he was, even the early interviews where he's still doing Degrassi, and it was still kind of seen as this meme or joke that he was a rapper, a musician too. Listening to who he idolized, who he put on a pedestal. At the end of the day, those are the ones, when you talk about artist inspiration in the early days of artist career, when they talk about their inspirations, those are the ones that typically are the ones I imagine or you're going to hold closer to your heart, and those are the ones that you're going to try to chase. Taylor Swift too. She's an incredible writer, but she does, because you got to pay the bills. Yeah, I've been saying he's the Taylor Swift of hip hop, and he has a lot of his and I'm not going to diminish all of his fans, because I'm cool with some of his fans, but I do say that he is the Taylor Swift of hip hop, and a lot of them are Swifties because they're not fans of the music, they're fans of the vibes. So that's what it is. So I'm almost an hour and a half in, and I need to get up out of here. So I left half of the show on the table. Um, the thing I want to come back to, and I'll probably lead off with this next week, is I want to talk about that was great. Yeah, I had a good time. Um, I do want to talk about the ADHD way that we process grief in ADHD, and there's two ways that we kind of deal with grief with ADHD. One, the grief of loss, like losing somebody that you love, and I've experienced that way more times than I want to, especially over the last year. But then also the great grief of the person that I thought I was going to be. Like, I always compare, what could I have accomplished had I been diagnosed as a had not because I had been diagnosed as a child. What could I have accomplished had my diagnosis been heeded to when I was a kid? And I got the care that the treatment that a lot of my white peers who had ADHD, because like I said, I knew a whole lot of black kids that ADHD on paper, but they weren't getting treated for it, because ADHD in the 80s and 90s as a black kid instantly means you got slapped in remedial classes no matter where you were. And so I want to talk about those levels of grief, and those two layers of grief, and that's probably what I'll do on the next show. Um, I'll talk a little bit about them. I'm going to probably have a more in-depth video about it, so stay tuned for that, y'all. Yep, you didn't just fail. The world isn't made for us. It's not. And I don't even see it necessarily as a failure. Like, I have two businesses. I run a nonprofit. Um, you know, I consult with a lot of people that have money and have very successful companies and businesses and brands and stuff. I don't necessarily see it as a failure, but it took a long time to get here, and I feel like I wonder what my road would have looked like had I been medicated, or had I had the framework to navigate this world with my neurodivergence, as opposed to where it was constantly working against me. And I felt like I was going crazy because something was wrong with my brain. And I felt like there was a secret that people weren't letting me in on. So I think that's what I'll talk about next time. I'm gonna wrap this up. I do appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Um, don't listen to the Drake, y'all. Just say I'm just playing. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.